Hello everybody, it's Nick. I thought I would make a video, and I kind of have some stuff from my process of transformation over the last few years, and I didn't have an easy transformational process into what eventually became my understanding of being a Pleiadian Starseed. And I don't know that this is all true or not, but it's my life and it's just as real as it gets. So I mentioned in my last video that this all started, I think my thoughts started to change in 2011 in November, and it started to intensify. I was living at Occupy, Miami, and I just was getting exposed to some new ideas, meeting some people who, said some meaningful things to me in my life. And after I left the Occupy movement, we were evicted, and I went to live with the Rainbow family in the Ocala National Forest for a while. And, they taught me a lot about community as well. And after that, I returned home, and I started doing some writing, and I knew there was something that I had never experienced before, and I called it love. And I was raised Unitarian Universalist, but I was raised without a God concept or concept of being connected outside of my material body. So I came home and I wanted to talk to my family about love. And I didn't know at this point that love was indescribable. And there was nobody in my environment that could take me and explain to me what was going on. So after some time went by and I was trying to figure out what was going on, I could feel all this energy coming into my head. I was looking at everything. I did find the Pleiadians at this point. I considered, what if I'm an indigo child? Like, all these things, they were a little weird for me. And I was like, nah, maybe I'm just nuts. And I just kept reading and reading and reading and reading and trying to figure out what was going on with me. But I guess what happened is that I became frustrated because I couldn't talk about love. Nobody in my environment was understanding what I meant. And, I spent a long time in my life drinking, and I had, not been drinking at the time, and I started again. As you can see, I lived a hard life. I lost a few teeth along the way, and, I got some fake ones, but, I'm here with you all, so why not? Anyway, I started drinking, and I decided that I would spray paint the inside of my family's home. And I'm 25 years old at the time. So I take a spray paint can, and I start spray painting. The garage floor still says, to this day, the earth is burnt. The living room wall said, God is glue, and our glue is love. The hallway said, alcohol turns off non-local communication. There was a few others throughout the house. I don't remember. The police have pictures because my parents called the police. They ended up taking me into a mental hospital, and I still wasn't convinced that I was mentally ill. And of course, they forced me onto psychiatric medications. I did some really neat writings in there too, and I do have a blog, and I put a lot of this stuff on it already. But I really want to do some more organization on it before I try to share it. It's more of a storage space right now. Sorry I'm talking fast. I just don't want to get you too bored here. So anyway, I get out of the hospital and I keep doing some more reading and some more reading, and I'm really becoming convinced that what I was experiencing was spiritual in nature and not some sort of disease that they described me as having, because I had this energy and these thoughts. But what went wrong for me is that I expressed myself wrong. I got angry at my frustration of my inability to, first of all, not know what it was that I was experiencing, which to me now is just God or consciousness or love. Love works just fine for me. Anyway, so I got myself off these medications. I got a job somewhere else where I wasn't stigmatized. I moved out to a remote resort just outside of Yosemite National Forest, and I stayed there for a year. I was healthy. Everything seemed fine. I was working really hard on myself there. I was reading a lot of books. I'm really into social activism, social justice, and I want to know how, I was reading a lot about what do we need to do to make this world a better place, what kind of economic systems, what kind of management systems, if, obviously that's neither here nor there, another day. I was reading a lot of Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, just books about life, about our past, hunter-gatherers, things like this. I drew some pictures, which I'll share with you. The first one was probably about 6 months, 7 months after I, had this first initial blast of energy, or downloading, or whatever you want to call it. And I drew these pictures, and later I found out that I think they're mandalas. And I wasn't doing it intentionally, but this is the way the first one came out. Maybe somebody knows what these mean. I've never tried to interpret them. And then later on, it was, about a year later, I ended up doing another one, which was quite different. And I'll share that one with you. Anyway, kind of interesting. I don't know. So, I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm doing some open eye meditation inside of the forest. Really getting to know the plants and, medicinal qualities. Just trying to get down to my roots a little bit. What was I going to say? Oh, another interesting thing, I had picked up a book about plant consciousness, and I was doing something weird. It had recommended that I start asking the trees and the things in nature, how do you feel? And not out loud, but in my head, like, how do you feel? And I started to get responses. And they weren't the responses that if you had asked me a question of how do you think that tree feels, it wasn't the same answer. So it really struck me. It was a really neat experience, and I kind of did it here and there. I had taken a couple hits of LSD that I had kept to myself, and kind of had some personal experiences where I really started to. I had taken a few. I had tripped a few times in my life. Nothing. I don't go trip crazy or anything. But for some reason, I on my blog, some guy had written that I had some deep-seated emotion that could only be cleaned out by psychedelic. He actually said vegetables, but the LSD seemed to work just fine. Anyways, I had some interesting experiences where I started to kind of hear the soul speak a little bit, and I noticed how nature responded inside these experiences, and how the people around me responded, unaware of the fact that I had ingested this substance. Anyway, I don't know what parts of this were important, but I just kind of thought I'd share along the way. Anyways, it's about a year and a half later. It was the 22nd of June. My world just changed. I dropped into what I call a non-drug-induced hallucinogenic experience. Conversation was no longer the same. It was like the soul was speaking to me at all times. Everything was about me and what was going on, metaphorically, but I seemed to understand. Everything was very synchronistic. A voice came in my head for the first time, really. And at first it said, this is the voice of God. I was like, okay. I was like, pick up a book. And I pick up a book and I start reading. It gives me instructions. And I'm told to, break up with my girlfriend and all this wild stuff. And it was probably best for me because I had been planning on doing it anyways, because we weren't really together on that level. But it was like a giant scenario, and my ego was out of control, and I was going to die, and I had to get it under control and make it be quiet and all these things. And I was still working. I was waiting tables in a restaurant. And, I had a pretty crazy experience. Apparently I was supposed to, go serve God in the restaurant, and like this old man, and he was bearded and everything, and his name was Philip Morris, and I don't know, he may have actually been the cigarette guy, but that's how I related him. It was a nice place, probably was. and it turns out that he was not actually God, but he was the economic God. It was all these weird, crazy things. You know, a lot of people in my life became biblical or religious figures or incarnations of them. It was wild, and most everybody around me was alien. And obviously, they weren't really, but I was in a process of learning. I was using a Dremel tool. I was doing some wood carving and stuff at the time too, and I was actually carving the wood, and like these planes were flying over and dropping chemtrails, and I thought that I was making it happen. It was wild. And then at one point, it was like I had to show all these aliens that, you know, God was here, and I drew this crazy picture, or I painted this crazy picture, and that's supposed to be God there, and that was his voice coming out of it, and it was like, I didn't even have control of my hand, I was just like shaking like this. It was wild. And so this goes on, like, really intense for about a month, and the whole experience went for about 3 months. And I hope my video doesn't die. I might have to make this in 2 because I don't have a lot of space on my computer. So I'm going to try to make this quick and just kind of burn through some stuff. And I had a wild time. But I recorded it all in this this book here. I tried to write down my experiences, and I got all of them for at least a month and a half. But I got a lot of pictures from the second half, and so maybe one day I'll get those up. And I couldn't get my camera to connect to my computer. I would have put them in the video. So I think that maybe my experience was difficult. I found this that I wrote at some point. I wrote all this stuff down while I was going through it, and you know, like I said, it was like I was tripping balls, but I wasn't. It says, my ego was stuck in a developmental stage equivalent to a 12-year-old. 2 days ago, I was a teenager at 16. Yesterday, a young adult of 18. Today, I am 21 years old in my soul. I hope to be 28 tomorrow. So somehow I was killing the ego, but at the same time I was behind emotionally. I was in a traumatized emotional state of adolescence, and I had to go through a lot of understanding my relationships to my family, and my friends, and my unconscious desires, you know, and a lot of wild things that really aren't worth putting in the video. You know, but there was a lot of weird stuff. I had to wash my hands a lot, but it was because I would spread superbugs. It was weird. I was commanded to eat corn tortillas and peanut butter for an entire month, and then it was told to me that I had to do that so I could understand what it was like to live in a country where you have to eat the same bland food every day, and it's not as good as peanut butter and corn tortillas a lot of